Mr. Owen, I would like to be perhaps the first from the media of Montserrat to welcome you to Montserrat.
Thank you very much. It's a great honour to be here.
We heard quite a lot about you and a lot surrounding you and your selection to come to Montserrat. And well, your selection first of all, and eventually your accepting the appointment and so on. And I'm sure you would have, if not heard, would have read some of the things that went on. There was a time when I even thought, gee, I don't know if I was this gentleman, I'd be a little bit weary about coming here. But you are now here, which shows that you thought completely different from I was thinking. And as I said, welcome to you. Tell us your impressions being here.
Thank you. No, it's a great pleasure to be here, and it's certainly been a long process for me to arrive, but we're really happy to be here. My first impressions, it's a bit cliche, I should think, but it's beautiful. You know, that's my first impressions. As you well know, I come from St Helena, and I've been living on St Helena for nearly 6 years. One of the things you notice very differently when you arrive here, your island is very green. On St Helena it's green, but it's brown down at the coast, whilst here the whole island's a green place, and it's extremely beautiful. The other thing I must comment on, and I'm sure lots of people do, but your nation is super friendly. Everybody is friendly. It's been wonderful walking around and talking to people. Your people are very vocal, which is wonderful, and that's been a big difference really. And I'll give you an example. We went to a meeting the other day about Grace, my 11-year-old, who's going into the secondary school, and there must have been 70 or so parents in the room, and I thought it was going to be a quiet meeting. No, not at all. It was really chatty, lots of people asking questions, and that's really good. I quite like people who are very vocal. But the welcome so far is been wonderful. We've been travelling around, getting to know the island. The kids are obviously wanting to go to the beaches and try everything out. They're very excited about starting school this week as well. But my first impressions, it's lovely, it's welcoming, it's friendly, it's a great honour to be here.
I have to tell you, we've heard many times from our mostly deaf persons who come here, and they make some comparisons with what they're doing for Montserrat with St Helena. And I think a little later we might get to that. But tell me a little bit, you said that it's brown down to the coast in St Helena. Do they have beaches?
We have one beach called Sandy Bay Beach. It has dark volcanic sand too. Lots of people don't swim there. You tend to paddle there when the kids are playing the surf because it's got a dangerous rip current there. But what most people do on St Helena, you jump off the rocks and off the pier head, and there's a lovely place called Lemon Valley there. People go and basically jump into the sea. So shade is a lack of shade down by the coast is one of those things. And St Helena has a very green heartland. A sort of tropical forest, and has lots of wet areas, but has extremely dry areas. So in Jamestown, it's dry like it is outside today. Maybe not as hot, you're hotter here, but still very hot. But yeah, that's the noticeable difference, is you're green everywhere, whilst St Helena is not.
So it's fair to say that's a little bit more arid on the coast side. But as you go inland,
yeah, absolutely. And the other major difference you have there, it's a significant difference between being down by the seaside, as they call it, and being up in the country, which is the green area. And you can have amazing differences in temperature. Of could be 32 in town, but it'd be 22 up in the heartland. And we used to live up in the wetter area, as people would call it. Share some major differences in temperature. Whilst here you don't get that. It tends to be, if it's warm here, it seems to be warm everywhere across the island.
6 years may not have been a very long time, but as we're talking about this and the temperature and so on, and life in St Helena, we know well, and I said this kind of cautiously and carefully, that until quote unquote now, tourism was not one of your big things there. But I would imagine with the advent of the airport, which there are some problems,
There are.
that that's expected to pick up.
Absolutely, it was the premise of the economic development. It's what the airport business case was set on, and that really is St Helena's only way of in securing economic development. It doesn't have any minerals or resources or such, and the whole premise of the airport really is twofold. It is to get the economy going. Tourism is key to that. But the other was access to the island, and that's been the success story for St Helena.
And I have looked at this before, but what's the closest access by air to St Helena?
So by air, it's Ascension Island. That would be the closest. Namibia is probably the one after that, and then South Africa.
Mm-hmm. Right, that's right. I wasn't sure it was South Africa or Australia. I was getting that too right. Okay, and now to our more serious business. You arrived here with a lot of expectation, I think, if not from the people, certainly from our governor, and in particular maybe the governor. What are you bringing to us from St Helena?
Yeah, so as you said, the last 6 years I've been on St Helena. My history is auditing, so I was an audit manager. My career was with the Audit Commission, and then I worked for PKF, and then took up the Chief Auditor role on
PKF being Panel Co-Foster.
Yes, that's the old name for it. If you work for PKF, it's definitely PKF these days. And I moved over to be the Chief Auditor for 2 years, and then moved over to be the Financial Secretary of St Helena. That was fantastic. I loved my role there. It's been a great job. The great thing about being Financial Secretary is you deal with so many issues. Everything comes across your desk, because nearly everything has a financial implication at the end of the day. And during that role, it's been very challenging. As you say, the airport was the big issue there. But the other things that we've gone through in St Helena is we introduced safeguarding there. You might have heard, if anybody's following St Helena, the Financial report was produced, and that highlighted a number of weaknesses and a number of challenges for St Helena. So there was a lot of financial implications there. We built a new breakwater, which I was involved with there too. And we went through a financial reform programme. We introduced accruals accounting for our financial statements. I was part of the change programme for government. We modified and rechanged and looked at the way finance worked there. We introduced a raft of new governance procedures. I was heavily involved in supporting setting up the PAC and taking that forward. And in my external, internal audit roles as well, I was the head of internal audit for a couple of years too, because the internal audit function fell apart there. So I took that on too. So there's been a raft of issues that I've dealt with across St Helena government for 4 years. Now some of those you can, I'm sure there'll be issues and concerns that I can bring here that I can address. You're very similar but very different, and I think that's the line I constantly use. And when I mean similar, well, HR issues are HR issues wherever you are in the world, and there'll be concerns. A lot of finance issues are very similar. But you have different focuses, your different areas that we want to be looking at. And we know about the ferry area at the moment, the port development, those types of things, your hospital. Now some of these I've lived through and worked through, so that side of things. I think the other thing I bring to the role is my engagement with DFID. I've had 6 years of working with DFID, and in a similar, again, but different way. And certainly my exposure to the way DFID works, I think, is a great asset. But I suppose one of the other great things that I believe I bring to the role is, good governance is actually the core of what I do. And having the background as an external auditor, well, that comes to nature to me. And you know, backing all of that is my professionalism that I see. You know, I hold that quite dearly. My professional qualifications and not just having a qualifications, but actually being seen to keep to those standards. You know, with the pillars of good governance are quite important to what I'm trying to do. So I think there's a raft of things. That's from work side, I would say.
Yes.
From a personal point of view, I love small islands. I come from a small Welsh community, just over 2,000 people, on the coast of North Wales, an old seaside Victorian town. And that swells to around 12,000 people in the summer, and then goes back to being a quiet, sleepy place in the winter. And that was my childhood. My father ran a petrol station there, so everybody knew my business, because if I did anything naughty as a child, my dad would find out about it before I got home. But I loved that sort of community.
Can I just stop you right?
Yeah.
What you just mentioned, does that still prevail in Wales?
Yes, it does, certainly so. And I was back there 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks before we came out, it's about a month ago now. I was there. My parents still live there, still live in the family home. Yes, you know, my parents sat me down in the first couple of hours and talked about everything that's going on, and my mum always has this comment: "You remember such and such and such and such, and what they've been up to," and a lot of these people I can't remember or can't recall, but you know, the some I do, and I loved that sort of sense of history and belonging and knowing. My parents, you know, used to send me the papers quite often, but now that's all online these days, so I keep track of the news of what's happening in my hometown, and Facebook is great for friends and stuff like that, and LinkedIn and stuff like that, so I follow that ways. But yeah, it still prevails, and I think that's great. And I think a lot of communities still have that, but it needs to be worked on, and that's probably one of the part of community life. That you know, you need to keep working at it. It doesn't just happen.
Yeah, I'm listening to you speak, and you touch on so many things that could come up for so many discussions, but which we will keep for some other time eventually, because you talked about culture, and last Saturday I had this big discussion about culture, good and bad culture. So that's I mean, what you're touching on there. There's such a thing. So there's some similarities, and so you're telling me what I'm understanding is that St. Helene has been through, and you've come through some of the things that you'll probably be faced with here. I mean, good governance, for example, I think is something that we really need to put in place and to get going. And I know there has been talk about it from the government side of things. So again, I think with your experience, that would be useful to have somebody at that level to assist in that way. You mentioned about building a breakwater, and so here you are coming to Montserrat, where we've been talking about a port, and port as against maybe just a breakwater, and that was so that you are now more able in St. Helena to accommodate ships more easily than you did before.
Yeah. So what we used to do before the RMS St. Helena, which is still running, it's a passenger liner, but it's a cargo ship as well, and it carries anything between 80 and 100 20-foot containers that come out of Cape Town on a sort of 3-4 week basis. And what we would do there, we would basically send out little ships or little boats and get the containers and bring them in. So the idea of the new breakwater really was to allow a vessel to moor off against it and offload straight, you know, saving a huge amount of time and safety as well. You know, the offloading containers on little barges is not the safest thing in the world. But with the extension now of the RMS now, they won't be using that breakwater because the RMS's draft is too low. So it really at the moment there's various issues that are going on there that I'm sure St. Helena are addressing. Yes, and there's various things I've done there that I would hope I'll be able to bring that skill set over to here. It doesn't mean what I've addressed there is an issue here, and after working here for 10 days, you know, there's certainly things that will require my attention, and over time I'll address those. And it's not to say St Helena's fixed, that's certainly not the case.
Yes.
There's issues, and government's government. There will always be issues that are coming up and always things that need to address.
Government is government. What what system of government do you actually have? How does it compare with ours?
The big difference is you have ministers, while St Helena have councillors. So they would have, they're all independent councillors as well, so they're all voted, there's 12 of them voted by the public.
Pretty much like we really have.
Right, okay.
That's pretty much, that aspect of it is pretty much the same,
Okay.
except that you may have a group of people forming themselves into a party or a coalition or something like that, and then you get ministers and so on.
Well, St Helena don't have that at all, there's no...
So who heads the
party.
council?
There is no head councillor there, so you have 12 councillors. 5 of those are then on executive council, and the 12 decide who the 5 should be an executive council. And bits and there you have cabinet, we call it executive council on St Helena, and the governor is the chair, very much like here for the cabinet. And yeah, that's a big difference. So ministers here are very different to our councillors there. We don't have permanent secretaries, we have directors as well. We have a director of a service who is responsible for that service. And the other major difference is each directorate would have a committee as well. So councillors would sit on that committee and hold the directors and the areas to account. So that's slightly some of the differences. I'm sure there's plenty other I'll find out as I'm going along, but that's the major difference between the two that I see politically.
Your contract is initially for
3 years.
For 3 years. Well, I'd love to talk to you again on this matter here. Maybe in 6 months or.
Very welcome to. I think it's important to
see what you think and
yeah.
what
you can hold me to account.
Because
yes.
I happen to be on the Electoral Commission.
Right.
And I know from since we started this new system, there's always been a call, which I know most people probably wouldn't, but which I know goes all the way back to '96. Should we have something like you just mentioned, or the system that we do have? And the only thing that changed really was the way we voted, but the system remained the same, basically. But it's quite interesting if other places have used this. So we'll talk about that and see what you can offer.
I can see. I would say on St Helena they probably want a ministerial system as well, so it works both ways. But it'd be an interesting topic another time.
Yes, in another time. Okay, so you bring really a wealth of experience and well, a lot of experience to the job, and clearly you're well prepared for it, so to speak. And do you foresee any difficulties in settling into what you're faced with here? What you will be faced with here? You're being faced with.
Yeah, at the moment not. The moving to a new place, moving to anywhere, has its challenges. And obviously, with any new place, you want to fit in, and that's just human nature. Yeah. As we see it, we want to be part of the community. And certainly on St Helena we were, and you can't spend that amount of time in one
Indeed.
place and not be part of the community, or we don't believe that anyhow. So on St Helena, I was heavily involved with the Cubs. I was heavily involved in the Football Association there. So I managed 3 football teams. We didn't have any coach. I found out last night you have a coach on Ireland for football, which is great news. I was one of the persons that helped the Sunday League for 6 years with a great friend of mine, Nicky Stevens, there, which I love. I love fun. And let's face it, I did that because my boys were really into football, so I took part. But I loved that. And we are heavily involved in the golf club. It's a real shame you don't have a golf club, because it's the one thing I really enjoy is going out on a Sunday and playing 4 hours of golf with good friends, and then having a chat afterwards in the golf house and all that. And that's where you hear a lot of the stories and issues that are going on. So I miss that. But we threw ourselves into the community, and we hope to do the same here. Helen was very active on St Helena. Helen's my wife, and she, with other people, led the donkey sanctuary there for years. She helped out in the school extensively for that 6 years. She was there too. You know, we see ourselves wanting to be here, wanting to stay and be part of the community. And that's what, you know, let's face it, our children here too, and, you know,
Tell us about the children.
So Matthew's 10 years old. He's about to start in St Augustine's. He's actually there today for his welcome and see how he gets on. Matthew, great sportsman, active. Matthew's one of these boys that just wants to do everything, and he'll keep going until he falls over and falls asleep, which he did last night. He just falls asleep.
Yes.
And then he wakes up at 5:30 and wants to go again. Grace, who's our daughter, who's 11, she'll be starting secondary school. She's going to the orientation on Monday. Grace just loves school, very chatty young lady. And then David, who's 14, a bit more serious, but again, big into his sports, big swimmer. He was a fantastic swimmer on St Helena. Both of my boys love their cricket too, which is a real positive coming to the West Indies, which they're quite excited about. And have been following cricket avidly as I do. So yeah, you know, we loved our life on St Helena, but it came to an end, and we've moved on.
Yes, I'm the last president of the golf club.
Oh right.
So you'll feel my pain in a while.
Maybe we can go and hit some balls somewhere together, find some place.
Indeed. And then we can talk about other sports. But it's very interesting what you're saying there and your involvement, and I'm sure you'll fit in very well and be, you know, useful, and to have your kids who are interested in sports in particular. That's very good to know. Work. In terms of work, and I know in the governor's introducing you, and towards the end after you were appointed, talked about how you were expected to deliver your duties, and certainly what she was anticipating, that there'll be a little difference in how people who come to work with us, since we have been very hesitant about even accepting or making good use of TCOs and so on. But that when you leave, or are ready to leave, or that during the time you're here, she will be hoping, or they're hoping, that you will be preparing people to be better able to carry on. But I can see from what you're saying that you're expecting a lot more.
Yeah, I think that there's many facets to my job. And I'll give you the example of what happened on St Helena, because I think that's important to be able to relate to it. When I moved into finance there had been an external financial secretary on St Helena for as long as anybody could remember. And that's the way St Helena always had. They had your chief secretary was a TCO, your head of police was, and various others, but certainly the financial secretary had been. So when I took over, part of my remit, and it was in my job specification, and it's part of what I do, was to ensure when I left that a team took over that was St Helena, and that was my aim all the way through. You can only do that when you've got good people around you, and on St Helena I was lucky enough to be able to identify one qualified accountant who was working in finance then, and two people who had worked in audit with me, and when I moved over to finance they came with me, or very shortly after that, who I'd mentored, and they both became qualified accountants. So we had three saints who were qualified accountants that worked with me very closely for 3 to 4 years. I'm a big believer of letting people take on challenges, delegating work, of bringing people on, and that's what I did with my team. During the last 18 months, I made it very clear that Dax Richards would be taking over from me. And I think if you look at my budget speech from the previous year, you'll see I announced that in the budget speech that would be the case. And that was quite important for people to know and understand that Dax was going to be the next FS. And the way Dax and I worked, we worked extremely closely and shared what we were doing. So when I left, Dax became the new financial secretary, Nicholas Yon became the deputy financial secretary, and Connie Stevens became the head of accountancy, which is, to me, if you spend time in a place and you put your heart in a place and you get to know people, and you know they were great people, and it was right when I left. They all became the next Financial Secretary and have taken St Helena forward, and that to me is the heart of a challenge of any technical officer when they come into place. That's no different to here, and that will be part of what I'm doing here. It might take 3 years, it might take 4 or 5 years. I'm not certain about what will happen. To develop somebody and ensure they take over from you is a lengthy process.
Yes.
It's not a year job, I can tell you now, and I certainly know that. And you know, I think any TCO, and I'm a strong believer of this, and I was in St Helena.
I understood there were some 80 plus.
And slightly more, yeah, it varies between up to 120 at times. We have a lot of medical staff who are, you know, St Helena's. We have medical people who are qualified as St Helena's, but in the UK, a huge chunk of that were medical staff. But I was part of that managing of that process, and I insisted in every TCO there must be a strategy about how that placement leaves at the end of the day, and we have somebody coming forward. What you need though is, you know, in certainly professionals, you need them to be qualified and moving things forward. So that is definitely my remit here too, and that's what I hope one day when you intervene, when I exit interview one day, I can proudly say that there is people from Montserrat taking over the jobs, and I'm leaving finance in a good, healthy place.
Yeah. What's the population, St Helena?
4,500.
4,500. So it's pretty much like ours.
Yeah.
Just a different mix. But what's your public service like?
The public service is very similar size, very similar in lots of ways. You know, if you look at it on paper, it could reflect each other, to be honest. I think you have slightly more in the service here. And similar sort of setup, really, in the way the directorates are all set up with the ministries. So yeah, very similar.
So do you have, what about education systems? What do you have, up to what do you do in St Helena, and how did you go forward from there?
Yeah, so St Helena, I would say the education is something that's been a challenge over the years. They have 3 primary schools and one secondary. Again, very similar,
yes.
Very similar sizes as well. You've got slightly more in your secondary. The one big difference we have in St Helena this year, for the first time in 3 years, we sent 7 bright students to university in the UK. That's the first time we've done it in 3 years, and that's been a real challenge for St Helena, that we haven't had our students going off. The money was there, we just didn't have our students doing that. That's a big difference here, because I was very proud to be along with the achievement last night in the evening at the reception, and great to see 2 bright young people here going on to do the Masters in the UK. And St Helena's had that, but you know, I think getting people through to their A-levels and then on to university has been a challenge for St Helena. Here we seem to have much more of a culture that people go to university and seem to be more qualified.
So A-levels and then what?
A-levels and then they...
Prior to what you just described?
Yeah, so they follow the English curriculum so it's GCSEs, A-levels, and then if they get the A-levels, they would go to the UK, to university.
And the A-levels go right through secondary school?
Yes, they would do. They're looking at that again, I think, at the present time, and it's been a challenge, education at St Helena. I'm sure the team's working on it at the present time, trying to ensure
is that because the next step is so far away?
No, I think it's more to do that the problem. One of the things is access to the island. Internet is terribly poor on St Helena. They're trying to get a cable at the moment. So when our students go on to do A-levels, getting in the expertise, I think, is a challenge to do that. If you had a proper cable system that you can get access to, much more online facilities, that would be extremely useful for them. But I think it's a challenge at the present time.
Would you have a direct flight from St Helena to the UK, or it will always go through?
So at the moment, there's only medical.
If it was to come that way.
So the contract that was awarded to Comair, which is a subsidy of BA, so it would have been a BA plane that sits on the tarmac. that was through Johannesburg, and the way that exercise was worked, it was looking at a central hub and the size of planes that could travel, because the runway there doesn't take the biggest of planes. So if you're flying direct from the UK, you would have to have a stop in any case.
Yes.
But it would be a narrow plane.
What's the time frame?
So the UK, I think it was around 11 hours they were looking at. Joburg they were looking at 4.
Okay, interesting. Very, very interesting. Yes. So that's almost the same like going from here through the US and to the UK.
Out, yeah.
Yeah, it would be 11 with a stopover in the US. But direct about 8. Direct. Interesting. Now, so just so we can probably wrap this up, because this is very informative. Do you think that, but it's a little early for me to ask this question, and so I probably won't ask it, whether it's going to be whether you thought already that they will come to, you're seeing from what you've seen, you think there's material to work with?
Well, I'll answer that.
If you'll answer that, okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've been working with some great people the last 10 days. There's some real enthusiasm here. There's some really good people who know what they're doing. And that's been fantastic to see. And you know, I can give you that after 10 days. Because it's always a worry going somewhere, what will you have around you? And let's face it, you know, I can do my job, but if I don't have good people around me who know what they're doing, it's not going to work. There's clear some training and long-term needs, and that's the same everywhere. And we'll look with that, and certainly with the Deputy FS and Dawn and I are sitting down next week to see how we can develop the service further, using her knowledge and expertise of the service, and see where, if we do need some additional support, or can we rejig the service in some way, how we use our people. That would be one of the discussions we'll be having right from the start. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I've got a great team downstairs already, and part of my job is to make sure we work as a team as we go forward. Yes,
you just mentioned downstairs, so maybe I should mention that this interview is being held in the I keep getting this wrong, the Cabinet Secretary Conference
In case you think finance is in the radio station.
That's right, yes. This is downstairs. And the downstairs is where the whole floor downstairs is the Ministry of Finance. Yeah. Very good. How do you like your accommodation?
It's very good, yeah, it's excellent. I'd like more people around me. I'm quite used to, when I come out of my office, I'm much more used to an open plan office, and having my treasury right next to me and my auditors right downstairs. That's a challenge here, and I can see that, and I know where you're leading, sir. There is obviously a challenge here with accommodation, and that's quite clear. For the last 2 weeks, I've been going out and I've been visiting as many as my team as possible. And I was lucky to go and visit the police today and the fire brigade. I'm trying to see where people are living and talk to people and find out what their issues are. And certainly accommodation is top of their list. Lots of people saying about the accommodation. And a lot of it is quite dated. I can see it was done straight after the volcano. So yeah, that's going to be a challenge for everybody. But I like people around me. I think that's always my way of working.
I'm sure the next time we meet with the government in a usual press conference, you will be part of the topic. And how do you think she'll report?
Well, I hope she'll report favourably of me like anybody would.
Yes.
You know, I'm here to do a job. I work very closely with the Premier, and he's probably the better person to ask how I'm getting on with my job. But you know, I'm here to perform. I'm here to deliver. I've got plenty to do as I see it. There's some great work that's going on. But yeah, it'd be great to talk as we go through, and like any civil servant, I need to be held to account as well. And I just hope maybe in 3 years when we sit here, we can talk about some of the positives that have happened during my tenure.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good to meet you. Thank you.